want to just thank you for the opportunity that we have to be here at this case competition to present our solution for OC Tanner and the case that we prepared for you and the solutions that we have. Just to start off, just like OC Tanner is focused on creating value and helping companies appreciate their employees, we're here to help appreciate OC Tanner. We're here to help show how we can continue growing and increase globalization in the market. The first thing we just want to start off with is the numbers that we have 53%. We have a solution and a strategy that we can reduce costs that we currently do by sourcing out to China by 53%. And that's in year one. That's approximately $300,000. But that number will increase as we increase in volume for our products. And that number will increase as we talk along the way. And I guess the first question you're probably thinking is, how are we going to do this? Are we sourcing from the US or are we sourcing from China? We're going to tell you that we're going to source from Mexico. That's how we're going to do it. And we're going to show you along the way how we're going to do that. First off, you might be thinking, do they understand the core competencies? Do they understand what OC Tanner is about? And we're going to tell you we do. The things that we know that OC Tanner is focused upon, the core competencies, is innovation, customer client care, employee recognition, and operating excellence. Those are the 4 things that OC Tanner is based upon. Our company's strategy as a whole that we always want to tie it back to is quality experience for customers and employees that inspire them, but at a low cost.
All right, so we want to be able to increase the globalization while keeping profit and quality leveraged. We know that for our zone of opportunity, it's important that as we strive for success for our 4 brands, we want to make sure that we have increased profitability as much as we can while maintaining the quality that is completely intact in all the products that we have. And so, what we want to point out is the long term, the time-sensitive opportunities. We think that currently China, while they do fit between this zone currently, they won't in the long term. And for reasons we'll explain later in factors like labor rates. However, we believe that Mexico will. And so we have analyzed Mexico and China in a few future slides. First, we'll show you in our private label strategy how we will classify the private labels into which labels will be produced and where. And then we'll analyze our country analysis as to why we chose China or why we chose Mexico. And then we'll end up with a cost analysis at the end. So, first off, why and how did we classify these brands? First off, Epoch has been around for 10 years, and it's already established. It is a high profit margin and low volume product. And so, we believe that China is the best option for them. They allow flexibility, they are agile fulfillment, which means they have a longer lead time, but for our items that have lower volume, they're able to withstand that, and they also provide higher revenue. At the same time, they provide the customization that is needed for these more high profit items. For our generic items, we have the other 3 brands, and that's because they don't require as much customization. In fact, we could use standardization with them. We could streamline. And if we go to Mexico with them, it is closer to the Utah distribution center, so we reduce logistics costs. And we also are able to have a leaner supply chain. And by utilizing both these strategies that we have allocated based on how we have classified our brands, we can get to that 53% cost reduction. And so, we wanted to analyze China and Mexico as if they were a company. They can have core competencies just like companies can. So we believe that China, they produce what we need for Epoch. They have the growing market with the skilled labor that's able to that is able to apply the customization that we need. At the same time, they're innovative and they have the agile fulfillment that I mentioned, all of which provide the perfect strategy for our Epoch brand. At the same time, we also have Mexico and their core competencies. They provide lower costs, which is preferred for us, but we'll also be able to maintain that quality because they have freedom of trade and they are close in proximity. So logistics costs, as I said, are reduced as well. And so, in summary, we will have EPOC, the brand, be produced in China. However, we will have these 3 brands be produced in Mexico as we apply the new strategies to fit their needs. And next, Chase will introduce how we analyze the countries.
Yeah, so we're just going to talk now about our country analysis. So the first thing we're going to hop over to is a cultural perspective. So we want to get a cultural perspective on what these 2 countries are like, Mexico and China. So the one we're going to point out here is uncertainty avoidance. So what this is this is an individual's ability to overcome ambiguity in a business situation, or if it's to work through quality issues, which is one thing we're going to really focus on. So we believe Mexico here has an advantage over China in the uncertainty avoidance. And we believe that working with Mexican officials and Mexican managers, we're able to improve quality based on the ability of communication and their ability to desire certainty in the situation, which will help us overall in having a quality product and also reducing that cost by better communication. The next thing we're going to point out is political implications. We'll start with China. So China currently has a little bit of a situation. President Trump was elected, and there's a little bit of tension there. So much that there's a potential of a 45% tariff being issued on goods coming from China. The reason for that is an undervalued currency. So right now, the currency in China is a 1-to-6 ratio. $1 US is the 6 of their currency. And so what we're going to try, and what economists are saying is that is undervalued, and China is trying to pull more business to them at that lower rate. And so what we're accusing them of is that is undervalued, it should be lower, and it should be much more fair. And so that's what we're concerned with in China mostly, is that risk of that tariff. We're going to hop over to Mexico. Mexico, on the other hand, has a NAFTA agreement. Currently this is in place. This is the North American Free Trade Agreement, where there's no taxes or duties coming on products coming from Mexico to the United States. And the only thing, in addition to that, though, is there's a potential 20% tariff on Mexican goods if they eliminate NAFTA. But we believe that the 25% difference between Mexico and China definitely makes Mexico much more satisfactory in the political realm. So going on to our next, I'm going to turn over to Lena. She's going to talk more about market growth and wages for us.
Thanks, Chase.
Yep.
So what we're going to talk about right now is market growth. When we make an investment is something that we intend to do long term. It's not just a short-term implication. So we're looking right here. These graphs are kind of speak for themselves. But when we look at market growth, especially the wage market, if we hop on over to China, what we're looking over at China is currently the Asia Pacific area is the highest rate rising manufacturing wages in terms of percentages. Currently, China is forecasted to rise 7% nominally as of 2017, which minus the 2.3 inflation rate that they're predicting is like a 4.7% in real wages, which is actually the 3rd highest. And if anyone else says, you've probably heard, oh, we should source maybe to another Southeast Asian location, they're the same way. Vietnam, Thailand, Bangkok, those places are the top 3 with China. They have huge labor wage rates. And so we're looking towards the future here. We look over at Mexico. In the past decade, Mexico actually has seen negative wage rates. It's been going down because of the economy. And as of this year, they did increase the wage. The government did. It's not market driven. However, we are a little bit above where we are paying for actual wages for China. But if you just look at what could be forecasted in the future, if we're going to make an investment, we have to be sure that it's a smart investment. And by going to Mexico, as you can see by the wage rate that it's growing at, I believe it's just went above 1.9% this year, which is significantly lower than anywhere else. China, Shenzhen especially, which is the manufacturing capital basically, that's at a 5.1%, which is well above the 1.9% global annual, the global rate that it's currently growing at. So we have to make sure that we consider these factors before we move forward with an investment. And in doing so, it'll help us capture increasing revenues and cutting costs and getting back to that bottom line of 53%.
So we're going to jump into our logistics. And this is going to be really a big contributing factor to getting that 53% reduction in our overall cost. So first we're going to point out China to Salt Lake City. So we're manufacturing, we took the headphone brand, for example, to really target and see which one is better, Mexico or China. So we started just in a city just west of Shenzhen, comes out of Shenzhen, travels across the Pacific Ocean, we dock in Long Beach, and we're up in Salt Lake at the customization factory in Salt Lake City with a total landed cost of about $7,500. And in addition to that, there's a transit time of 36 days on these goods. And we're going to hop over to the next slide, which is going to have some of these pitfalls with this situation, with sourcing from China and even that Southeastern Asia area. First one is variation inventory levels. So right now, we are sourcing a very lean warehouse. Products coming in, we're trying to push it out, customize it, and then get it pushed back out. And so if we're sourcing these big quantity orders from China, our inventory could be skewed, we could have delayed orders, which could really mess up our lean system that we have in place, which is a core competency of the company. In addition to that is a long cash-to-cash cycle. So cash-to-cash cycle, our cash is being tied up with inventory that's on a boat heading towards us. So for 36 days, we're without that cash, and we're stuck waiting on the inventory to get there. In addition to that, we're inflexible lead time. 36 days, we're not as responsive, we can't respond and be as agile in the marketplace. And our last point is expedited services. It costs a lot of money to ship that much freight from Shenzhen to Salt Lake City by air. It's about $10,000 for that same shipment that costs about $7,000. And so combining all that with our $7,000 landed cost, plus the hidden costs that we have incorporated in that, like taxes and other duties at ports, we are out of our zone of opportunity, especially with the profit margin that we have. We said there's two limits of profit and quality. Right now we're pushing the upper limit of that profit margin. And so going forward, we want to look at Mexico to see how we're able to correct that. So Mexico, we're sourcing from San Luis Potosi in Mexico. And so at that location, it's actually a similar location where Bose manufactures their headphones. So this is somewhere where they're capable of doing it. So we're bringing them from truck up to Salt Lake City with a total landed cost of $3,000. So $3,000, it takes 3 days to get our product from Mexico to Salt Lake City. And going to the next slide, we can see our benefits. We're reducing our lead time, and from 36 days to 3 days. We're much more lean. We're able to bring in products, we're able to immediately customize it and ship it back out. I mean, our turnover is just incredible with this. And in addition to cash-to-cash cycle, 3 days, right? Our money's tied up with inventory, gets there, back out. And last is CO2 emission reduction. We're about sustainability, and we're trying to make sure that we can also contribute to our overall cost reduction through that method. So going to the next slide, we can see we're going to have a 60% reduction in CO2 emissions. This is based on the 40-foot containers that we're sourcing from Mexico, and if we're in China, from China. So if we're bringing 40-foot containers from Mexico, we're paying the truckload up. But those containers, if they're coming from China, they're having to pay to come across, boat, back, and then they have to find some cargo to fit inside of it again. And so that cycle is just, we're able to eliminate that. Overall, reduce our emissions, and overall, reduce our cost by sourcing from Mexico, being closer, and we're lean and fitting our core competencies as a company.
Thank you, Chase and Lena. So we wanted to use the research that we created and found and really be as thorough as we could. So we took the hard data that we had from logistics and from the market and from the cultural implications, and we put into a weighted factor analysis. And so these are the 5 topics that we rated them on. We applied a weight to this category and then evaluated Mexico and China. And you'll see on the next slide, this is the scores that we had. It was scored on a 100-point system, and as you see, Mexico is coming up and above China. And while China is considered the manufacturing hub of the world, how could this be? How could Mexico be beating them? Well, because of the market, the wage rate increase that's happening, and because of the factors we discussed, we believe that Mexico is the best long-term option for us. It will grow with us, and we will be able to help them grow alongside us. And so that's why we have decided on Mexico as our main manufacturing plant. And so next, Nate is going to introduce the cost analysis that went along with this, so we can be well-rounded and fully see all the areas.
Okay, so we really hope that by this point you understand that there are a lot more costs involved in sourcing our product from either China or Mexico than just the raw purchase price. Some of those seen here are, like loss of control over our intellectual property or the lengthening out of our cash-to-cash cycle. And it's also important to recognize and understand that while we're going to Mexico, that won't eliminate those hidden costs, but it will reduce them considerably for us. And so, go to the next slide. We see here that just in, as we shorten our lead times and decrease cash-to-cash cycle and such, and regain control over a lot of those different aspects of our business by bringing the company closer to us in Mexico. There's greater control over that quality. And having that control of that quality decreases those hidden costs as seen in the yellow. And as mentioned previously, manufacturing costs will also go down. This then in turn makes our real gross margin a lot better in Mexico than it would be in China. And then we see here as well the triple bottom line. So we see we can achieve this 53% reduction in total costs while also being able to support the people in Mexico, bringing them jobs and decreasing the unemployment rate there. Also by ensuring high quality products and doing so at a low cost to ourselves, we're able to stay in that zone of opportunity as well. Likewise, we're able to reduce our carbon footprint in the world by 62%, which is a huge additional bonus in addition to our profit margins.
So I know we talked about it a lot, and we just kind of want to sum up so you guys have a really good idea of what we're really looking at here. Just some facts, just to food for thought. So currently, according to Boston Consulting Group, as of a decade ago, it was 6% more expensive to manufacture in Mexico than it was in China. However, currently, within the past few years, it has become 4% cheaper to manufacture in Mexico than China. And the reason for this is because China is the hub of manufacturing, of course, and it's rising in skilled workers, and those workers are getting paid more and more and more. And so Mexico, we need to look back. It used to be the hub of manufacturing, and people are going back there. 86% of business execs, 150 of them were surveyed, says that they are looking back at possibly sourcing from Mexico rather than China again. And that's like a huge number, and we need to be able to capture that lost opportunity. Something we just want to reiterate, just so we have an idea, is we have 53% reduced cost. That's the potential reduced cost. And that's if, first off, we classify these items into generic commodity items. They are not the same items. They don't go to the same consumers. We need to treat them differently. The next thing we need to touch on is country analysis. We considered probably 5 to 10 different probably factors into how we chose Mexico versus China. And one thing we need to take into consideration finally is TCO. We didn't do post-ownership cost, of course, because that would be the same regardless. However, we did cost analysis on this. And one thing we want to point out is if you turn to page, I believe, 18 in your packet, there's a list of 51 different commonly overlooked hidden costs, basically, that people don't seem to take into account. And when we looked at the packet, we're like, wow, we are missing a lot of these. So last night, we went through every single one of those, all 51 of those. And so which ones of these can we analyze and add to our hidden costs? So that's where our TCO comes from. And the data is found further within the financial packet, part of you interested in looking at that. So with this 3-step strategy of classification, country analysis, choosing Mexico, sourcing, and finally, doing this cost analysis and seeing the savings in real time of what we can do, we can increase our triple bottom line and gain this 53% of reduced costs. Thank you. Are there any questions?
Wow. Wow. Innovative. So you highlighted the upcoming risks that we face going forward with China. What additional risks? I know you highlighted a couple of them. One was NAFTA with Mexico. What other risks are we not looking at in going to Mexico? Because it just looks all great, but we don't know what we don't know. What possibilities did you find? Did you discover anything in research?
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. So one of the big risks we have in going to Mexico is we currently don't have production there, while we do have production and suppliers in China. And so going there, there's a big risk in trying to figure out and find that ideal supplier who's willing to work with us and have that innovative and high collaboration relationship that OC Tanner values with all their suppliers. And so there's that huge cost that we haven't been in that market and we don't know for sure. But we're confident that just like we were able to go find great buyers for dinnerware as presented in the case that would reduce our costs, we're confident that we have the same skills and abilities to do research in the market and find great suppliers in Mexico.
If I could just add to that really quickly. So your question was, if I'm just clarifying, what risks are we looking for in Mexico that we didn't present in this case currently?
Yeah.
Correct? Okay, great. Another thing that we didn't really speak about too deeply that we did consider is we have this kind of political instability in both countries that we need to really take a look at before we decide. But we did analyze the cost both. They're about the same for China and Mexico. Another thing we did need to take a look at is we took a look at the cost of getting boots on the ground. That's really essential to making sure we have that perfect quality that we demand. And the way that we looked at that is we're like, yeah, it's going to take a lot of money. However, we're local. We're more local to Mexico. An expat can cost up to $500,000 out of China. It's expensive to have people there and having boots on the ground. But if we have Mexico, and if we are that close, we are within a couple hours plane ride, you know, if we're right there with boots on the ground, we lower those costs significantly, and we add that to our 53% of reduced costs, because we did take into consideration in the hidden cost how much an expat would cost for both Mexico boots on the ground and boots on the ground in China as well.
And I'd also like to add, we looked at infrastructure, and that was one of our concerns. However, as you can see, the railroad and the quality roads, they are below China. However, there is the hyperspeed railroad that is being currently under construction. And so while we realize there is risk, and it's obviously not going to be as developed as China, we do have potential resolutions for these risks as well.
So inventory, there was one slide that I can't remember where I saw it. Inventory implications in China greater than the inventory implications in Mexico. Why?
So, thanks for that question. So, in the case, it mentioned that there was an issue where a product was sourced from China and they forgot the hidden cost of that holding extra safety stock and having more inventory in the pipeline going from across the sea from China to America. And that came up to 24% cost and reduced their cost savings by going to China by 20%. And so we took that and it came out in our calculations to reduce our cost by about 8%. And then in Mexico, because we have those shorter lead times, there's not as much inventory moving around, we're able to do it quicker, we're able to reduce those costs.
It's not about minimum order quantity, it's about lead time, right?
And if we can add upon that really quickly, one important thing that we just need to touch on is we are focusing China as when we did the tourist of the plant, we talked about how there's a lot of orders that are very one-time orders, one product. And if we need something like, we heard the story about the Pepsi bottle that needs to be customized, that is a China job. That is where the innovation comes in, and that's when we talk about inventory. We need lead times for these stable products that we're always going to need, our private brands. But the things that need innovation, the things that need customization, that's when we go to China. These are the places, the high margin products, where we can afford these high lead times. There's a little bit of an uncertainty in order to make sure that we're receiving top-notch quality. It's just more of a core competency with the country.
So then you're not saying remove everything?
From China? No, we are not. Hopefully we, I'm sorry we didn't address that in the beginning. We actually want to keep the watches there. The watches are something that will need a little bit more customization, a little bit more design, and we want to keep the like what we were saying about the Pepsi bottles, ones that require high customization, that China really is the best supplier for that rather than Mexico.
Okay. I do remember this one.
So you're touching on that a little bit of why you choose China, but tell me more about what are the advantages of staying with China?
Great.
Yeah, I can speak to that, and thank you for your question. So what are the advantages of sticking with China if we were to stay in China? I guess, like Lena was talking about just previously, the main thing with the advantage of there, and like we talked about, is the innovation there in China. I mean, in Mexico, our whole goal of going to Mexico is, like we said, to reduce the lead time of products that are more of a steady flow that can just be turned around pretty quickly. They're all those private labeled objects. So those are coming in, they're getting customized, and they're coming back out. But China, the real goal of China, and why we have these watches that are going to stay there, they've been there for a while, is that they're going to maintain profitability in there, and also the collaboration with the suppliers that we've already built the relationships with, which would be constantly replaced with a product that's already so innovative. So Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, that's partially, I'm just wondering if there's not more hidden costs in going to Mexico, things that we're not looking at. I think of the environmental issues that, right, wrong, or different, well, wrong, that China is dealing with in some way. How's Mexico going to handle this? What kind of costs are going to be associated with that? What about other regulations that you get around when you go to Mexico that you can't get around, or when you get around to China, which you can't do?
That's a fantastic question. Actually, we did address that while we were talking about. We were worried about all these extra costs, especially environmental factors. So we looked into costs of natural gas, we looked into EPA stuff, and the conclusion we really came to was we are reducing CO2 footprint as a whole with logistics. And with that, Mexico does have stricter environmental laws. And we want to be able to be environmentally sustainable, but also reduce costs at the same time. So that's why we were talking about, there's a huge issue with bringing in freight into the U.S. We have all these empty containers that are coming in that need to be shipped back out. And a lot of the time, it's the people that are shipping in that are internalizing those costs. We don't know what to do with all the empty containers that we have a lot of times. So by reducing that cost of shipping those back empty and just that waste, we are moving to Mexico instead and making sure that we have full truckloads when we go back and forth. And so that's where the 62% CO2 emissions reduction comes from. It's from that idea that we are reducing the backtrack of empty containers that are unnecessary and provide no value to really anyone.
If you'd like some more information, here's just the calculations that we found. And that's why we figured it was more, we had a better we reduced our carbon footprint. And we realized as well that while there may be issues that may come up that we haven't addressed here, we do have the extensive research behind as well. And we think that if we invest in Mexico as suppliers, if you invest in a supplier anywhere, you can work on increasing their at least local economy and how they do their business. And so we think that we may run into issues at the same time, and we'll address them as we said. We may be able to address them and help with our supply management as well on that.
I think it's important on this one, anytime you throw up a big number like this, that you clarify or specify percent reduction where. Because your overall carbon footprint isn't reducing by 62%. Transportation, maybe, your carbon footprint due to transportation.
If I could touch upon that really briefly, another thing we talked about is currently a lot of the energy sources used in China for factories are coal and oil. However, it is $11, approximately actually $15 compared to $4 per unit for natural gas, which is healthier for the environment. Actually, we looked into that. And so it's $4 in Mexico and compared to $15 in China. So we were thinking into the implications of possibly switching over, running our factories from coal and from oil that we were probably using in China to natural gas, which is significantly cheaper in Mexico.
So you are saying that there's a 62% reduction in your overall carbon?
No, that is just for our logistic costs.
Okay.
We weren't able to find the data of how much our carbon footprint is at the facility. So we had issues finding data on that.
Two quick questions. One, you showed a slide on cultural perspective, and maybe I just missed this, but I was wondering where those numbers came from.
Yeah, so this is Geert Hofstad's cultural theory, if you will. Not just him, but in his research, he has analyzed all of these countries and how they differ with each other. So here, we're comparing Mexico with China, but we could easily compare it with the United States. We could see and we did in fact see the comparison between Mexico and the United States to see how we would work well together as suppliers. And we shared a lot. The individualism was similar, the power distance was also similar. And those categories can mean that the power distance, the distance between the boss and the employees are the same. So there's the same structure set up. So that's just an example of how it's used. Do you have any additional questions?
That's good. So unrelated to this, my other question was, you commented that OC Tanner does not currently have a presence in Mexico. Can you walk us through this timeline you've got?
experts in the field, so we realized the numbers may be a little off. That is why we implemented the milestones you'll see on the bottom. So it may take longer than, see, from when we start the new supplier search, we said we would start that in January, ideally. And then by April, we would be starting negotiations with some suppliers. In the month of March, we would have done site visits with the top 3 or 4 suppliers.
You can answer the question and then we're
Okay. So that's when we would have moved on from, we found our suppliers, as you'll see at the top row, and then we would have gone to site visits. We calculated the cost for the trip out and our hidden costs actually. So it was, I think, $3,000 per person for the site visit. And then from then on, we would just follow the line, the consecutive line of initiating negotiations. We think that usually will take a month to 2 months. We said a month here, but we realized that maybe flexible as well.
And then just one other thing, just to make sure if I understood correctly, you said we don't have any presence in Mexico.
Yeah, I misworded that.
Yeah, and yeah, so just want to clarify that we don't have supplier presence, but we do understand that Mexico is one of the top 6 countries that we do business with outside of the U.S.
And to clarify, yeah, and just to clarify, this wasn't, I mean, this is obviously contacting and negotiating contracts with suppliers who are already established as well, so we don't have any startup costs. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.